I'm Alan Colmes. Always happy to welcome Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra. I almost feel like you need no introduction. You're so well known. More than 80 books translated into 43 languages, numerous New York Times bestsellers. You're board certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and metabolism. And you're guru to many, though I know you shirk from that word. You had a piece out and have a piece out that just was published in the San Francisco Chronicle about the psyche of Donald Trump and the whole explanation of what it is he appeals to. And you mentioned the phrase the shadow. What is your take on what's going on here?
The shadow is that part of ourselves that we are ashamed of, that we feel guilty about. And everyone has a shadow. And if you ignore the shadow, then it says, you're ignoring me, I'm going to embarrass you. Donald Trump, at the moment, is in a way representing the shadow of our collective consciousness. He is, unfortunately, and I would never say this unless I believe to be 100% true, but he represents the racist, the bigot, the one who's prejudiced, the one who is full of fear and hatred, the one who represents emotional retardation of a 3-year-old. And yet he's so popular because he's given permission to our collective psyche to express their darkest demons.
Now, is he all the things you mentioned? Is he racist? Is he mentally retarded, as you said, or is he just someone who you say represents that? But is he those things?
I think he is. I think he's racist, he's bigoted, he's prejudiced, he's full of fear, he is angry, he has a lot of hatred, he pouts, he's belligerent, he's emotionally retarded, yes.
Yeah, emotionally retarded, not mentally retarded, emotionally retarded. Let me correct myself on that. And yet, why is it that he appeals to so many and has just about clinched the Republican nomination?
He represents the lowest denominator in our collective psyche. He brings out the worst in all of us. For example, what I said just now, I would never say these things about anybody. Okay, I would never
not
say
like
this.
you.
Yeah, it's not like me, but he's bringing out the worst in me because I too am fearful of what would happen to the United States of America and the rest of the world if, God forbid, he became the president. If, God forbid, he was in charge of the nuclear weaponry. God forbid, he was the commander-in-chief of the largest army in the world.
You say that a lot of people have it wrong about him. I mean, in reality, he's not bizarre or anomalous, you write, as many people have suggested. That's not what it is.
What I'm saying is this is a part of every human being. And the shadow comes out when you remove a sense of responsibility. The shadow comes out when there is anonymity, when there are dehumanizing environments, for example, when there's war or terrorism, when there are poor examples of peer behavior, when there are passive bystanders, when there are rigid levels of power, when there's prevailing chaos and disorder, when there's lack of meaning, there's implicit permission to do harm, there's an us versus them mentality, there's lack of accountability and isolation. So this is not an abnormal thing. This is part of every human being. I think it's important to bring awareness of the shadow so you can bring the light on it and take some responsibility and understand that he represents the darkest aspect of all of us.
How does one put light on the shadow? How do you defeat the shadow?
First of all, you defeat the shadow by not doing what I'm doing right now, okay? Because I'm being reactive to it. You defeat the shadow by bringing in the light. But as I said, he has a knack of bringing the worst out of everybody. And if you stoop to his level, he can stoop even further down.
That's really interesting because you always preach and talk about being non-reactive, not reacting to success, not reacting to failure, not looking to outcome.
The true yogic way, yes.
Right, and that's been your message.
He's overshadowed my yogic being right now because I feel that unless we talk about this in the open, this is going to, if he, God forbid, becomes the president of this country, the world is going to be a scarier place.
How does a society like ours, a well-ordered society, in fact, you mentioned when this comes out, when the shadow comes out, societies that look well-ordered and rational, fair and just, cultured and refined, suddenly erupt in horrible displays of everything they are not about. If we are all those things in the first part of that sentence, why are we erupting?
Alan, look at Germany, right? They had the greatest musicians, Mozart and Beethoven. They had some of the greatest philosophers of all time, Ludwig Wittgenstein, you name it. The greatest thinkers, Einstein, the greatest scientists. And when that shadow erupted, we had the Holocaust. So this shadow is a very dangerous thing. It is part of the collective rage. It's part of the collective resentment, grievances, hostility, anger. And it's when it takes over, it can take over an entire nation. It can take over, just like ISIS. That's also part of the collective shadow of Islam.
We're talking to Deepak Chopra. You say the Republican Party has kept the shadow on a slow simmer for decades. Are they the responsible party for this erupting?
Well, yes, I do think so. But what he's done, which is, I think now the Republicans are becoming aware of it, he ambushed them, he hijacked them, and he's destroying them. So if any good might come out of this is that he will have hijacked and destroyed the Republican Party. And you can see that now, with Paul Ryan. On the one hand, he has to endorse him. On the other hand, he says he's a racist. They're all kind of now scared of what's going to happen to the party.
Well, it's amazing. You have Paul Ryan saying this is a textbook case of racism in a later sentence in the same paragraph. He says, yeah, but I'll support him because he's better than Hillary Clinton in terms of the agenda that he wants to get through.
He has to have an ideology, the Republican ideology, but
Trump doesn't have it. Trump doesn't have one.
He doesn't. He says one thing in the morning.
I think you just leaned on your microphone there. If you just pick up your book there you go.
He says one thing in the morning. In the afternoon, he says exactly the opposite. And in the evening, he denies that he said either of those things.
In the same sentence? He will say, I'm for free trade, but I think we need to put more tariffs on China. In the same sentence.
Well, as I said, maybe I was too kind when I said he's emotionally retarded. Maybe he's mentally retarded too.
Yet here's a smart guy who developed a great business, claims to be a billionaire, though Mark Cuban says maybe he's only a millionaire.
Yeah, no, he's a con artist. He's not a billionaire. He's a con artist. He's periodically declaring bankruptcies. He's never declared his taxes, so he's obviously evading something.
Well, so maybe he's not paying federal taxes, or maybe he's not as rich as he says he is, or maybe he's not giving to charity at all. We don't know exactly what it is. But I want to get back to the question of, okay, well, you don't defeat this by getting deeper into the shadow or being as negative and playing his game, and then you say he goes deeper. So how do we overcome this?
The first thing is we are aware of it, and that's what I have become, aware of the worst in me right now.
He puts you in touch with the worst in Deepak Chopra.
Well, you're seeing it right now, the worst of Deepak Chopra. Okay, I have never said these words about anybody in my life, but I feel I'm coming from a place of fear right now, because if he becomes the supreme commander of the biggest force in the world, if he's in charge of nuclear weaponry, would you trust a belligerent, emotionally retarded person with that?
Absolutely not. And that's why the Republicans, I think, are having a very difficult... If you're a Republican, you're in a much more difficult place than maybe you and I are, because we consider ourselves progressive, right?
And he's not even a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. He has no opinion about anything other than he can change it anytime. I think, he's not in this for the country. He's in this for himself, totally and completely.
By the way, he hasn't received the nomination yet, so it's possible you could have, like Mark Kirk said today, by the way, a senator from Illinois, that there may even be a contested convention. Actually, it was Jeff Flake of Arizona who said that today.
Well,
he may not.
Going back to the shadow, by the way, the shadow is usually secretive, and now it's not. It's in the open. The shadow is dangerous. The shadow is irrational. The shadow is primitive. It in a sense, reeks of the prison, the lunatic asylum, and the public lavatory. And that's what he's brought out into the open. So for that, we should be grateful. And now we should all calm down and say, how can we settle back into the light? Because you can't destroy the shadow with darkness.
I've got to take a quick break. We'll talk about how to get back into the light in just a moment. Our guest is Deepak Chopra. Our number is 877-367-2526. Dr. Deepak Chopra, founder of the Chopra Foundation, world-renowned pioneer in integrative medicine and personal transformation. He has written an op-ed piece, and I think there might be more to come about this coming election, and specifically Donald Trump and what it means in terms of the shadow. But now let's talk about the light. We talked about the shadow, but we want to move toward
Alan,
the light.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to vent myself, show my reactivity.
A little venting here tonight? Yeah.
Express the worst part of me, but you can't defeat darkness with darkness. You have to bring in the light.
Correct.
So I think at this time, we have to all go within and ask ourselves, what do we want from our leaders? And the four things that people actually want from their leaders are hope, trust, stability, and compassion. So once again, hope, trust, stability, and compassion. Whoever is listening right now should ask themselves, does Donald Trump offer any of those four things? Or is he just pointing his fingers at everybody else, playing the victim? He's playing what are called control dramas: belligerence, anger, hostility, manipulation, which is unfortunately, because people like, what they call reality shows, is the ultimate example of a reality show. But now we should ask, can we get hope, trust, stability, and compassion from this guy? Number one. Number two, is he going to fulfill what we really need right now in the world? A more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, happier world. Number three, is he going to make friends with people across the world? I just came back from Europe, where there is also a bit of this right now. In Austria, they had a right-wing extremist almost win the election. And so there's a lot of fear in the world. And if you perpetuate fear and anger and hostility and resentment, there's going to be violence. There's no way that there's not going to be violence.
Well, you had this candidate at his rally say, hey, I'll pay your legal bills. Then he denied saying it. Yeah. And boy, isn't it great? I like to punch somebody.
He denies everything he says, and it's on tape, right?
I know.
No, so actually, according to him, if you're a brown man like me, you're not even an American citizen.
I would, and I'm amazed that anybody who is not a white male would even support him. Now,
no, but there are some very good, reasonable white males too. I hope there are not enough angry old white men to support him and to vote for him. You've done an interview I mentioned to you, with Forbes, Kathy Caprino at Forbes, where you talk about the soul of leadership, which goes right to the heart of what you're talking about here: consciousness, self-awareness. Yes. So I talk about 7 characteristics of great leaders. Number 1, deep listening as a good observer, listening emotionally, listening with the heart, listening with the intellect, and listening with the soul in quiet time. As being emotionally intelligent, which means that you know how you feel, you know others how feel, you're able to be free of emotional resentments yourself, and you're able to manage relationship non-violently, something I'm not doing right now. 3, awareness. What am I observing? What am I feeling? What do I need? What's the best way to fulfill this need? What are the people observing? What are they feeling? What are they needing? How do I fulfill their need rather than perpetuate their anger and fears? Number 4, action orientation, being a role model for action, asking for feedback, taking responsibility for your actions, and developing smart goals. Number 5, responsibility. To be authentic, to have integrity, to have a higher calling, and to take responsibility for whatever goes wrong and give credit to whatever goes right to your team. A good leader knows how to harness leadership by having shared vision, emotional bonding, and complementing of strengths. You'd see none of this right now in this.
Well, these are all qualities that sound magnificent, and yet none of them seem to apply to the Republican candidate. It's amazing. None of them.
No.
Not
and
one of
the
them.
Republicans know this, and they're embarrassed by it. And they've been, as I said, there's not everything about the Republican Party is bad, but now they've been hijacked, ambushed, and they're going to be destroyed.
The issue of self-awareness and consciousness, watching yourself grow, guiding your growth, seeing where you're going, having what you have taught me about choiceless awareness, being aware of being aware at any given moment. And I just wonder how much awareness we're seeing among those, and particularly in the candidate himself and those who might support him, about where this is taking us.
This is taking us to the abyss.
What happens
This
if
is
he's
taking
elected?
us to the valley of death. It's taking us to the darkest places that humanity can go.
You talk about stopping participating in the climate of fear, mentally, physically, emotionally, divorcing yourself from secondhand opinions, the need for violence against the other who threatens us. And yet we have a campaign here who is talking about the other. The judge is the other. Anybody who disagrees with me is the other. Those who've said Barack Obama is the other, a brown-skinned man is president. It's us versus the other, but we collectively are the other in the world. We're all the other.
Yeah, we are collectively right now in chaos and fear, reactivity, and control dramas and belligerence, and we are part of it. I acknowledge that, I feel relieved that I could release all my anxieties today with you towards the general public, but now it's time to reflect. Okay, reflect. What do we really want? What's the purpose of having a great leader for a great nation that, the whole world looks upon America to lead the way?
You used the word violence in a sentence a couple of paragraphs ago in terms of, well, even I'm being violent now. And what you refer to, obviously, is being violent in your language, in your speech. So violence isn't just about physicality. If you talk a certain way, language can be violent. Yes. Including some of the things you've said here tonight.
Absolutely. But I said them for a purpose, just to bring awareness to the violence that is in all of us, including myself. Now, having brought our awareness to it, we ask ourselves, so now how do we go beyond this? And one of the ways to go beyond this is to acknowledge it, that it's there in us, and that we can now go to a higher level. So coming from fear and reactivity or fight-flight, we can go into restful awareness, into the intuitive response, the creative response, the visionary response, and ultimately come up with a creative solution to what we have right now, which is a disaster.
Let me take a quick call here for Deepak Chopra. You'll hear it with your headphones. Bobby in Los Angeles. Hello, Bobby.
Hi, Deepak. Namaste, Sasrigal. Thank you for taking my call.
Namaste.
I want to ask you something. Being an Indian myself, I very much love the teachings of peacefulness, and as you, an Indian person, know, being calm, being peaceful, yoga, meditation. But I'm curious, you being an Indian person, you're very well aware of the Islamic terrorist threat out there, particularly from Pakistan and other places. When a person like Donald Trump, who I'm not a fan of at all, when a person like him says we want to fight the terrorists and we have enemies out there and they're violent and they cause problems, how does a peaceful person like you, what is your answer on how to fight?
You can kill a person, a terrorist, but you cannot kill a terrorist ideology. It's like a Medusa's head. For everyone that you kill, you'll have 10 more cropping up. You cannot kill an idea that appeals to violent people. The only way you can overcome is to come up with a creative idea, a bigger idea, a higher vision that is peaceful.
Thank you for the call. Does that mean we shouldn't be at war? We should not be conducting a war against those who might do us harm?
There is a stage where collective consciousness can reach a critical mass where war will become unnecessary. And that's what we should all strive for, whether it's practical right now or not. It's like having an illness. You have cancer, you have to have chemotherapy. You have a big tumor, you have to cut it out. So there's a part of the solution to terrorism is short term. But in the long term, you have to elevate collective consciousness.
Before we part company, let me ask you about Jaya.
Oh,
Which
Jio.
is
It's a new platform, Jio.com, Jio. It's a service platform that will offer everything you need for health, well-being, longevity, higher consciousness. And it's being launched on Tuesday. Once again, Jio, Jio.com. And join us, and let's together create that critical
So actually
mass.
you can work with this site to get the information you need to get more healthy.
The future of well-being is personalized, process-oriented, participatory, predictive, and preventable.
And there's some great minds on that website.
We have some of the best minds to guide you to that place of higher consciousness where you can achieve well-being.
Deepak, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Alan.
And we're back in a moment at 877-4-ALAN.